And then finally, for this God alignment, we have natural selection. Hey, didn't somebody one hit next with this one? You know stuff's gonna be really hype when it's called slumber. Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today we're talking about the God Alignments. This is another attempt at potentially giving us some new prayers. The last time Jagex tried to add a new prayer book with the Ruinous Powers, it was a little bit just too much. It didn't necessarily get the best feedback, and they said that they would probably come back to the new prayer book with a little bit of a different flavor, and that's what they've done here. Before, what was pulled was just an entirely new prayer book called the Ruinous Powers. In this case, we will have the God Alignments. You'll be able to align yourself with one of 3 gods they've proposed here, which will give you 4 new prayers in your current prayer book. So you won't have to switch prayer books. You can just assign with one certain god to get one set of 4 prayers. So there's 12 prayers that are on this list, and you can use 4 at a time, and we're gonna just read over them. For the first God alignment, we have the Rites of Balance, which would be the Guthix God Alignment. You would have to complete While Guthix Sleeps to unlock this. That's one of the big reasons this is coming up again, is this is a potential reward for While Guthix Sleeps, which is gonna be released later this year. First, we have Strike Balance, which is a standard prayer. Attacks have an X% chance to grant the player adaptation. Adaptation is a new status that provides bonuses to accuracy, minimum hit, and prayer penetration to other combat styles for 1 attack. So many things just in the first prayer, dude. I do feel like a lot of the reason that the original prayer book that they proposed didn't do that well because it was just too much. Like, a lot of things were going to change at one time. A big part was just completely changing your prayer book to a completely different set of prayers was a very big deal, and already just aligning with a god has kind of changed that up, but still, this very first prayer is a little bit complicated. So you only have a chance to get adaptation, which then for like 1 attack, you'll have more accuracy, increased minimum hit, and you can hit through prayer. It's not that complicated, I guess, and I can understand because you only have an opportunity to get adaptation. It's not like you'll get it constantly while you have the overhead on, or it's not an overhead, while you have the prayer on. Then it should be pretty strong if you do actually get that adaptation status effect. Next, we have Net Neutrality, another standard prayer. The player's maximum hit is decreased by X%, while their minimum hit is increased by Y%. There's going to be a lot of X's and Y's in this, a little bit of an algebra moment. This one's pretty straightforward. This is kind of like the Osmumten's Fang, which has a decreased maximum hit and increased minimum hit. The thing that makes the Osmumten's Fang really good is the fact that it double rolls accuracy, so using neutrality here is not going to turn like any weapon into an Osmumten's Fang, but I can see why the use it'd be all right for some consistency from your weapons. Next, we have Nature's Redemption, which is an overhead prayer. It'll heal the player by 40% of their hit points if they fall below 10% of their maximum hit points, draining their prayer points fully. This is just a stronger redemption. If you guys don't know the redemption prayer on the regular spellbook, this usually heals you 25% of your hit points if you fall below 10% of your max hit points. Just a quick correction there. Redemption actually heals your health based off of how high your prayer level is, not based off of how high your hit points level is. Basically, redemption is used kind of in a pinch, an emergency situation when you don't have heals. You can use redemption to save yourself, and this redemption would be a little bit stronger. And then finally, for this god alignment, we have natural selection. Hey, damage above a certain percent of your max hit points will heal nearby allies by a certain amount of damage taken. This will also consume prayer points per player healed. Okay, so basically, let's just plug in some numbers here. Let's say damage above 10% of your hit points. If you were 99 hit points, if you take like a 10 or more, then maybe you would heal 50% of that damage to your teammates. That's actually pretty cool that a tank could be sitting there tanking damage and then healing their teammates. Also, so you'd be tanking damage, which means you're losing health and you're losing prayer points when healing your teammates. Give your tanks a hug, fellas. It looks like tanks are gonna have a tough time with natural selection here. I do like the idea on paper of people kind of having different roles during a fight, like a tank in this case, tanking more damage, healing up your teammates, maybe having more prayer restores on you because you know you're gonna be draining prayer points more often and whatnot. I do like the idea of that. For the next alignment, we have the Ruinous Powers, which is the Zaros alignment. Apparently, this is gonna require Desert Treasure 2 to complete. That was the original Ruinous Powers. They tried to get it in through Desert Treasure 2. It had like 20 prayers on it, not just these 4 vows, to be fair. So if you were to align with the Zaros OSRS God, you'd be able to use Umbra's Vow. Attacks drain your opponent's defense by X% of damage dealt, up to Y% of their maximum defense. Very simply, as you do damage, you'll drain your opponent's defense, and they'll cap it at a certain amount so you can't get an NPC's defense to like 0. That's actually a pretty interesting one, because most defense draining stuff tends to come from special attacks. There's magic spells like vulnerability, but generally special attacks will do it. And in this case, you could focus more on special attack weapons that do a lot of damage, while you use Umbra's Vow to actually lower the defense. I mean, it would still be nice to just open up with like a Dragon Warhammer special attack on certain monsters and whatnot, but it's an interesting prayer. Fumus's Vow. Upon being poisoned, the player gains poison severity for an accuracy bonus for when their next attack within a certain amount of ticks. This was the messed up one, wasn't it? When they first made Fumus's Vow, didn't somebody one hit next with this one? Can editing Dak get that clip? Isn't that wild, bro? As with anything that gets added to the game, of course we could say, like, as long as it's not buggy and there's something stupid you could do, like one hit next, like any update could be messed up at first. So it's just cynical for me to sit here and be like, as long as they don't break it, of course, as long as they don't break it. That being said, I don't see this being a huge deal. Just once you get poisoned, you get a little bit of accuracy. I don't know how much I would use that. We have Glacy's Vow. Gain X% defense bonus whilst the user is standing still. So if your tank is just standing still, he'll be taking less damage overall. Now remember, if you're aligned with this God alignment, you can't be aligned with the Guthix one that we already read that had another good tank prayer. You can only use one of those at a time. And finally, Cruor's Vow. After killing a target, you would convert a certain amount of prayer points into hit points, which is pretty similar to basically the Sun Charis in Tombs of a Mascot, which also uses special attack, to be fair. The basic idea of it is you're converting prayer points into health, which is kind of nice. You can heal up prayer points with like prayer potions and super restores. That's a lot of prayer points like per inv slot, so it's kind of nice to fill up an inventory with prayer potions compared to brews, which can heal up a lot per inventory slot, but Ceradim and brews also lower like your stats, so they're not good for damage. That being said, there's a lot of prayer points to convert into hit points. They do bring up this could be interesting to use at like the Abyssal Sire or the Tombs of a Mascot Path of that Meccan, another cool place to use it, so Cruor's Vow could be interesting. And finally, we have the Covenants of Light. This would be the Siren God alignment. You would have to complete Song of the Elves as a base requirement. First, we have Slumber. That is a very exciting sounding prayer. You know stuff's gonna be really hype when it's called Slumber. This is a standard prayer. Negative effect timers such as bleed, poison, burn, disease, and venom are frozen while the prayer is active. It's an interesting one on paper, but just being frozen, so once you turn off that prayer, like you're gonna start getting hit by that poison damage again. But it could be, understandably, if you didn't have a cure for poison or venom, whatever was on you, and you use this prayer to make sure you didn't take damage until you did have the cure, that could be useful. Crystalline Redemption. We have another redemption prayer here. This will heal the player by 25% of their base prayer level if they fall below 20% of their maximum hit points, draining their prayer points fully, which is kind of nice. Falling below 20% of your maximum hit points, it's usually only 10%, so this is a little bit safer version of redemption. Then we have Harmonize. This is incompatible with Guiding Strikes. It's the next prayer we're about to read, as you can see, so you can't use these next prayers together. For Harmonize, attacks will apply vulnerability for 1 tick. Vulnerability is a new status that increases damage taken by a certain percent. This one seems really sick to me, actually. This could be very overpowered with good teams. It says right here that attacks will apply vulnerability not like a percentage of the time. Basically, every time you attack while you're using this prayer, you give the NPC that you're fighting vulnerability for the next tick. So if the rest of your team was all attacking 1 tick after you would just be increasing everybody's damage by whatever percent they end up going for. I do really like having things that make group content more viable, and stuff is just better to do as a group that works together. I think that's extremely good design overall. So that would be an interesting prayer for sure. Then we have Guiding Strikes. Attacking increases nearby allies' attack bonus by a certain percent of your chosen attack style's attack bonus for Y. Y is linked to your weapon's attack speed. I don't know exactly if slower or faster weapons weapons will make this different. In other words, if you're using guiding strikes, if I'm reading this correctly, and you're using like a crush weapon, because they give the example of an Elder Maul, anybody else around you that is also using a crush weapon should get bonus accuracy from their crush weapons, depending on how fast the weapon you are using is. That's kind of a confusing prayer, dude. The idea makes sense. Like, it would make for more of a variety of weapons. You could use a weapon that's not necessarily good DPS, but it could be helping the rest of your team do more DPS, and it wouldn't take as precise timing to do well as Harmonize does. I think I like Harmonize a lot better than Guiding Strikes on this book right here. That's already all 12 prayers right there. A few of them look very interesting. I think Harmonize was the most exciting. Umbra's Vow seems very interesting for lowering defense. So does Cruor's Vow for being able to potentially heal, as well as the extra redemptions are pretty cool. Overall, I like the idea of a lot of these prayers, but it definitely is going to change up a lot. The thing is, some of the reason that the other prayer book didn't make it is players didn't want to have to choose between different like protection prayers or having a different version of like piety and rigor and augury and stuff like that. And in this case, you would just be adding other prayers to your prayer book that could also give more benefits. So I think it would be pretty cool to get some of these. Some of these I wouldn't use at all. I don't think Slumber looks that insane, or even Neutrality, which just increases like the minimum hit and decreases max hit. But some of these are interesting. I like the idea of group content being better to do as a group that works together. So some of those prayers are very interesting for sure. Tell me what you guys think about this prayer book rebalance. I have seen a lot of people be very unhappy with this so far. I think this would be really fun to use, but exactly how well they're going to be balanced obviously is still in question. A lot of this says, you know, a certain X% of a chance to happen, so we don't know exactly how well they're going to be balanced, which means if you like the idea of it in general, then you should, you know, vote yes for now and be able to see what they do to balance it. Of course, they could balance them to be too weak, too powerful, and that would be the next steps of trying to get these prayers in. Overall, I'm a big fan of getting some new prayers down the road. I do think less is more in a way. We probably only need a few new prayers. At least in this case, you only get 4 at a time. So even though they're trying to add in 12 prayers, they're not just totally revamping the prayer book and changing a ton of stuff with PVM, but it still is a lot of changes at once when you're adding new, very important prayers. Thanks for watching. Click the like button, subscribe for more. I love you.